Hello, my name is Tucker Johnson, and I am going to be your facilitator today as we experience Nimdzi Live, where we talk about the latest and the greatest in translation, localization, internationalization, culturalization, and all of that fun stuff global companies need to delight their international customers, or at least not to piss them off too much. Perhaps today we are going to do something a little bit different. Not really different, because we did one the other day. We're going to do a workshop format, and I'll tell you what that means in a little bit. Participants in this workshop today can expect to walk away with a better understanding of the business landscape in which they are operating, as well as some fun negotiation tactics to help them get ahead in that landscape. This workshop today is going to be geared towards LSPs, LSP project managers, account managers, salespeople, vendor managers, whoever at an LSP is doing negotiations. But that doesn't mean that everybody can't learn for it. We try to keep things accessible around here for people that are just starting out in the industry, so we may be going over some basic stuff. And please, if you do have experience in the industry, make sure that you are providing that in the comments and sharing the knowledge with everybody. But before we go any further, I want to introduce my colleague, Melissa, who will be helping to moderate today. And Melissa, hello, Melissa. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this workshop, what we're getting into here?
Yeah, totally. So first of all, hello, everybody. I'm a VP of Customer Success for the American region at Nimdzi Insights, and I will be helping Tucker moderate the event. Today, we will discuss, as Tucker already mentioned, negotiation tactics for project managers, vendor managers, maybe account managers as well, right? So we will drop a bit of knowledge around there. A few notes: if you haven't subscribed to Nimdzi, please do. Then you will be the first to be notified when we have new stuff, new content. And also don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter as well, so that you can receive the latest on our research and reports. And in case the stream gets interrupted on LinkedIn, we are also live in YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So you can just hop over and keep enjoying the conversation. As moderator, I would appreciate if you can tag me, Melissa Torres, if you have a comment directed for us, so that I can, see it more easily. And yeah, without further ado, go ahead, Tucker. Let's start.
Thank you very much, Melissa. And just to reiterate that, go ahead and tag Melissa if you got a comment that you really want, because I want you guys to be chit-chatting in the comments. That's fine. Talk amongst yourselves. But if you have something that you'd like addressed up on stream, if we have time for it, please tag Melissa Torres in the comments. You can also tag these other very handsome Nimdzi team members right here for various things. If you want a copy of the slide deck, my colleague Nikoli is lurking in the comments. You can tag her, or otherwise reach out to her if you want a copy of the slide deck today. As Melissa mentioned, we're doing this on LinkedIn. So if you're new to LinkedIn events, then welcome. We like to do things here on LinkedIn because everyone's already here. It makes it really easy. LinkedIn's rolling out some really cool features to show your appreciation during the stream if you find something insightful or find something interesting in the stream. In this course, what we're going to be doing today is breaking it up into four different sections. And we're going to start with taking a high-level look at the overall translation market, localization market landscape, market influencers. We're going to take a look at the bargaining power of customers, bargaining power of suppliers. We're going to go through some fun little tactics for overcoming fear and intimidation in a negotiation setting, because that can kind of be a blocker for a lot of people because they get intimidated in a negotiation setting. And then we're going to wrap it up with some general PM negotiation tactics that everybody can use in their day-to-day life. Why we're doing this today? Because everybody, I don't care if you're a vendor manager, project manager, account manager, sales manager, manager of managers, everybody, or just being managed by somebody else, everybody has to negotiate in life. And you're missing out if you're not training yourself on how to do that well. So we're going to go through this. This is a workshop that has been inspired by an LSP client of ours that specifically requested this topic, so we put it together, and now we're sharing it with the rest of the world. Another reason why now is the time to be talking about negotiation skills is because 2022 is the year of the great renegotiation. And if you have not read Renato Beninato's article on LinkedIn, there's going to be a link for it right here in the slide deck if you get your hands on that afterwards, or you can certainly just search for it. It's published on LinkedIn. There's also, if you're more of a podcast type person, Nimdzi Live is available wherever podcasts are sold for free. And you can go ahead and listen to it right there. I wanted to give you guys just a sneak peek because I found an interesting blurb from Renato here. Our audience that are watching out there who are just getting into the industry or still learning about the industry, talk to us a little bit. What do you mean per word pricing? Like, what does this look like? Have per word prices, have they gone up? Have they gone down in the last 20 years? How have they been charged? What have been the events or the trends? You like talking about trends in our industry.
Well, they haven't gone up. They have either stayed the same or gone down. But they have not gone down as drastically as many people believe. There are niches and there are areas, absolutely. There are situations where prices have dramatically decreased. But in general, prices have been stable over the last 10 years. But stable in an environment with growing inflation means that actually the value of each cent that you get for your word is going down. It's not if it is not keeping up with inflation, it's going down. So pretty much you can say that there is a depreciation of the value of the word going down. But that's not the biggest driver in cost. I think that one of the biggest drivers...
And you're going to have to go watch the full episode on YouTube or catch the LinkedIn event if you want more than that. But I'm going to say thank you, Renato. And with... thank you, Renato, because that provided, I was looking to write an introduction to this workshop about why now is the time for renegotiation and why now is the time specifically for LSPs to really hone their negotiation skills. Because as Renato's thesis states, 2022 is the year of the great renegotiation. At least that's where the smart money is for us here at Nimdzi. And what that means is that for quality translators providing quality services out there, there's the potential to go back to your clients and have a conversation about how much you're getting paid by those clients. And that's all I'm going to say on that because Renato lays it out very, very nicely in his LinkedIn article. So I'm going to refer you over to there. And get right into it today. How LSPs add value. Before we talk about negotiation, before we talk about getting into situations where you're having to defend the value that LSPs add to their clients, to the language services value chain, we need to have a conversation about what that actually looks like. So we're going to go through the 5 forces model published by a gentleman named Michael Porter, and then we're going to see what that looks like in the context of the language services industry with the general theory of the translation company. Now, Michael Porter published, and it was a businessman, consultant, smart guy, published a paper in the Harvard Business Review called How Competitive Forces Shape Strategy. And in this article, he laid out this 5 forces model, Michael Porter's 5 forces model. And it's an interesting model that, once again, why would I bore you myself trying to describe when I can simply play this beautiful explainer video,
business competition as a tug of war,
and you'll get the idea.
Rivals, with each competing for more sales or market share. But according to Harvard Business School professor Michael Porter, competition is more complex than that. It's not about who's the biggest. It's about who is the most profitable. And profitability is defined by 5 competitive forces. Let's start with your buyers, or customers, who would always be happier to pay less and get more. In the airline industry, price competition is fierce because so many travelers just want the cheapest flight. Then, there are your suppliers, who'd ideally like to be paid more and deliver less. Powerful suppliers will use their clout to raise prices or insist on other more favorable terms. A third source of competition comes from substitute products or services that meet the same basic need you do. These aren't always obvious rivals. The toughest competitors may come from different industries. New entrants can also create tension. For instance, Southwest Airlines challenged the industry by flying just one kind of airplane, reducing costs and allowing it to offer better ticket deals. This pushed other carriers to spend more to retain their customers. Finally, you still have to fight your existing rivals, and intense competition reduces everyone's profitability. The major airlines have been in this position for years, forcing them to defend increasingly narrow profit margins, with fees for exit row upgrades, checked bags, even snacks. These 5 forces define every industry structure and shape your company's future. Once you understand them, you can make better predictions, create more competitive strategies, and increase your profits.
All right, thank you, Harvard Business Review. Go check out that video. There's a bunch of cool videos from Harvard Business Review over on YouTube, and I want to give credit where credit's due. So follow my sources, linked to the sources in the slide deck. Now, a gentleman by the name of Renato Beninato, who we already referenced earlier, and myself saw this 5 forces model, and we thought, how can we apply this for the language services industry? And we wrote a book together called The General Theory of the Translation Company. I've got a copy around here. So it doesn't matter. It's on screen. We wrote a book called The General Theory of the Translation Company, kind of outlining what this looks like in the language services industry. And the result is this diagram here, which is a visual representation of the General Theory of the Translation Company. See there, I just saved you having to read 212 pages. And around the outside, we have what we call the market influencers. And in the white ring in the middle, we have the 7 support activities. And in the middle, we have the 3 core functions. And what we're going to focus on right now is the outside ring, which is the market influencers. And these market influencers are just it's a dime store knockoff of Michael Porter's 5 forces. Essentially, we have the bargaining power of suppliers. We have bargaining power of customers, and these are the 2 that we're going to look at today. We have the threat of new entrants into the industry. We have industry rivalry, and we have the threat of substitute products in the industry. And as I mentioned, we're going to focus on those first 2 today. In the languages and services industry, there is a multi-tiered value chain. And at each stage, or at each tier, at each level in the value chain, value is added. And when value is added, that means the person in the middle of that value chain is marking up the costs on those products or services that they're selling. How do they get away with charging more? How does a multiple language service provider get away with charging 20 cents per word when a single language service provider can only charge 10 cents per word? Well, it's because they can mark that up. They pay their vendors less, and they mark that up because of the value that they're adding. And they're adding value through those 3 core functions of project management, vendor management, and sales, which you see here in the middle. So we go through this just as an introduction to understand how value is going to be added, because later we're going to talk about things like cost versus value. And if we don't define our terms first and talk about value within the context of the value chain, then we're all going to be lost. So, for consideration, if you're here, if you're in the comments, what is this? I need to. Yeah, if you're here, if you're in the comments, playing along at home, then please add your answer in the comment. What are the five forces or five market influencers in the general theory of the translation company? What does that look like? What's the difference between Michael Porter's model and the Nimdzi model? I'm talking slow because in case people want to follow along in the comments and provide their answers, they can. Oh, I'm giving you guys homework. I told you this was a workshop. What is markup and margin? What is markup and margin? Markup is when value is added and you charge more for your services and you make a margin on that. If you'd like to know the exact difference between that, there's great other workshops available from Nimdzi Learning where we talk about that. How do LSPs add value to the language services value chain? How do LSPs add value to the language services value chain? What are some of the services? What are some of the value add services that they do? Project management, vendor management, sales, any of those. So with that, I'm gonna bring it back over here to Melissa to see if there's any. She's down there lurking in the comments. Melissa, we got anything?
That's right. Not yet, Tucker. A lot of people joining from around the world. That's great. And awesome. Yeah, let's move forward. Maybe we can have a few questions later on.
Wonderful. Like I said, if you got questions, you got comments, tag us in the comments. Let's get right back into it. Lesson 2, bargaining power. So, in the previous lesson, we talked about the general theory of the translation company. We talked about the 5 market influencers and bargaining power of suppliers and bargaining power of clients were 2 of those market influencers that we looked at. So in this little mini lesson, we are going to look at those 2 things, and we're going to do it within the context of the general theory of the translation company. Now, I mentioned the general theory of the translation company earlier. It's great. Here's my copy. Whoops. Here's my copy. I finally found it. Buy it from Amazon, but that's not what I wanted to plug. What I wanted to plug is we have an audiobook now. We finally have an audiobook version of the general theory of the translation company, and you can find that on Audible. It is available on Audible right now. We are looking to publish a free version available for students and people that perhaps don't have access to Audible or don't have the resources for it. We want to make it as accessible and inclusive as possible. We're just looking. We're in talks. We're looking to line up some sponsors for that. So if you guys want any sponsorship opportunities, that's my plug for that. I mentioned earlier that there's some great stuff available on Nimdzi Learning. If you don't already know about Nimdzi Learning, then I want you to go check it out. It's nimdzi.com/courses. We have a bunch of e-learning modules. And in one of those e-learning modules, my co-author, Renato Benignato, actually teaches a lesson about the bargaining power of suppliers and bargaining power of customers, as well as just giving a good overview of the market influencer evaluation. So I'm going to let, once again, my colleague Renato do my job for me.
Let's talk about the other 3 forces that have significant impact on money discussions. The bargaining power of customer, the bargaining power of suppliers, and industry rivalry. Anybody who has worked in the language services industry for more than a day or 2 has had to deal with the bargaining power of customers. Regardless of your position on the value chain or whom you count amongst your customers, the hard truth will always be that while the customer most certainly is not always right, it doesn't much matter because they are the ones that are going to help you pay the bills. It is tempting to fall into the trap of crying foul and complaining about how unfairly the customers treat the poor little LSPs. The customer is being unreasonable, the customer is cheating me, the customer poisoned my dog and stole my girlfriend. These are all typical arguments, and the more time we spend denying or arguing against the current state of the industry, the less objectively we can actually accurately analyze our position in it and take steps to ensure our own personal success. This is by far the most powerful force at play within the language services industry, and certainly the one that most people come up against most often. Some of the factors that affect the bargaining power of customers in the industry are the availability of information, the cost of switching vendors, which we discussed in the previous session, buyer concentration, and size of the industry. The bigger the client and the fewer the players there are in a segment, the higher their bargaining power. The price sensitivity of the buyer, which means that in some industries, like patents, for example, price is not a big issue, while in others, like publishing, pricing is a big deal. Competition in the industry. The more competitors there are in a segment, the easier it is for the buyer to negotiate. The availability of substitutes, which we discussed in the previous session too. When it comes to the bargaining power of suppliers, we turn our eyes downstream and we take a look at the bargaining power that suppliers bring to the table. For many LSPs, this will be a refreshing change of pace, moving the discussion from one of relative importance to one of power. Translators may get upset by this section, as it basically outlines how your customers can work to push your prices down, which is surely an existing source of frustration for you. Freelance translators generally do not have a supply chain. They are the supply chain. There are many factors affecting the bargaining power of suppliers. For example, I can think of two very important ones. One is their degree of differentiation, how unique, and I hate the word unique, how unique they are compared to the other suppliers. And the other factor is the impact of inputs in cost and differentiation. This is essentially a discussion of the laws of supply and demand. If there are a lot of translators in your language combination, like English to Spanish or Chinese, the price is going to be lower. Other factors include the presence of substitute inputs, supplier concentration, and competition with suppliers. The fifth force in the Porter's five-force model is industry rivalry. Industry rivalry influences the market, but it is also highly influenced by the other four market influencers. It is important to keep in mind here that industry rivalry does not just correspond to the number of competitors, but also to the way in which these competitors interact with each other. Because the language industry is highly fragmented, as we saw before when you calculated the HHI for this space, LSPs do not compete at the industry level. Considering the level of competition in the industry as a whole, that would be madness. LSPs compete at the niche level. By carefully defining their niche, LSPs are able to shrink this huge amount of competition to a more manageable level. One of the things that strikes outsiders when they attend language industry events is that competitors, subcontractors, and freelance translators are friendly and collaborative. There are very few bitter rivalries, no Coke versus Pepsi feuds in our space. Mostly, this is because there is so much diversification in the industry. Sure, the industry is highly fragmented, but there are also so many unique niches that most LSPs don't compete with each other in their lifetimes. In fact, they may even be incentivized to cooperate with each other to a certain extent. The spirit of rivalry in the language services industry is essentially one of co-opetition, cooperation and competition. Even when you are competing with somebody directly, it makes sense to cooperate to a certain extent. It is completely plausible that the CEOs of rival companies are competitors for the same multi-million-dollar contract one week and then speaking on the same panel at a conference the next week. When two LSPs are both working for the same client, they work together. They try to impress the client with their spirit of cooperation rather than competition. This concludes the discussion about the outer circle of our model, the market influencers. And just to recap, there are 5 of them: the threat of new entrants, the threat of substitutes, the bargaining power of buyers, the bargaining power of suppliers, and the rivalry within the industry.
Thank you, Renato. for that. I don't have a whole lot to add. Renato covered that pretty well. So if you want to go over that in the slide deck, once you get your hands on it, we list the bargaining power of customers and the bargaining power of suppliers. And you can also listen to the general theory of the translation company when that comes out. Or check out Renato Beninato's full course called The Business of Translation, which is available as an e-learning module at nimdzi.com/courses. So, playing along at home in the comments, or not, you can just be writing it down for your consideration. What are the factors affecting the bargaining power of buyers? And what are the factors affecting the bargaining powers of customers? I'm going to change the camera back to me before you notice the typo on that slide. And we'll bring Melissa back in, because that's, ladies and gentlemen, concludes that little mini lesson. Melissa, how are we doing down there in the comments? Is Melissa muted?
Sorry, yes.
No problem.
We have one from Paulo Guimarães, Managing Director in Insight Language Solutions. He says, in a market with so many entrants, the bargaining power differs from verticals.
I'm sorry, say that again.
In a market with so many entrants, the bargaining power differs from verticals.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And I think Renato kind of touched on that. If you're in a vertical that really loves you really love your ISO certifications, and you're like one of the only Croatian vendors certified in ISO for that, I mean, you have a lot of bargaining power in such a situation. Other industries don't care about such things so much. What else we got, Melissa?
We have also Adi Namaran, Operations Manager at Bolingo.
Hi, Adi.
She says, true, LSP compete on a niche level.
True. Oh, true. Very true. Thank you, Adi. Alrighty. Thank you guys for participating in the comments. We'll move on here. And everyone thank Melissa for herding the cats today. Lesson 3, overcoming fear and intimidation. In this lesson, what we are going to look at, this is going to be quick and fun. We're going to look at power poses, and we're going to look at techniques to build confidence. So, power poses. I know some people, we got 74, 72. Oh my gosh, 2 people just left. 2 people just left because they know we're going to have an audience participation workshop here with power poses. Let me know in chat if you've heard of power poses down there. What are power poses? The idea behind power poses is that when you hold your body in a certain way, when you change your posture in a certain way, it's actually going to affect your mood, and it's actually going to affect how confident you are. So if you sit up straight, you're not only going to look more confident, you're going to feel more confident. And power poses are kind of, or so the methodology or the thinking or the theory goes, power poses are a way of just kind of doing this in a condensed format in, like, say, right before a meeting, right before a negotiation, where you're going into a negotiation and you're expecting to have a hard time. So what are some of these power poses? What are things that we can do? So if you're following along at home, we're going to be doing these together, starting with the Wonder Woman. Now, if you can stand up, I can't because I'm going to pull cords out of things. Then do it. Legs spread, hands on hip, and you just hold this. The thing about power poses is, I should probably show you this. You just hold this. The thing about power poses is you're just going to hold it. You're just going to hold it. You're going to sit here. You're going to do it. You're going to do it for 2 minutes. There isn't like an official amount of time that you're supposed to do. The Wonder Man is my variation because #representation, the victor. very similar to the Wonder Woman or the Wonder Man, except you hold your hands above your head like this. You just hold it. You just hold it. And you look like an idiot, but that's okay. That's okay, because powerful negotiators don't care about looking like idiots. They care about kicking ass and taking names. The fortress, you just hold it. Hold it. Like this. What we got next? The table lean. This is a good one. This is a full-on power move if you're in person in a meeting. Before the meeting, you just kind of lean on over the table. One of my personal favorites, the alpha. Very comfy. Slide on back. Hold. You know, this idea of exposing. You expose your breast. You know, powerful people aren't protecting themselves. Powerful people are exposing themselves to the world. Powerful people have nothing to fear. And this is what I'm going to do. Whip it. I'm sorry. Sarah Hickey. As you know, Nimdzi Live, we're always doing fun stuff. You know, we're doing this live streaming stuff now. But back in the day, we were kind of pushing the boundaries with our video marketing. If you think back 4 years ago, not a whole lot of folks were doing video. Is that a naked bait? You're going to get me banned off of YouTube, child. Sorry. Wow, that was super distracting. I have no idea how long you guys have seen that child running around in the background. Sarah, take it away. Help me out of this situation.
Hi, my name is Sarah Hickey. I'm the Chief Researcher at Nimdzi Insights, and I'm going to do a brief series on how to be a better presenter. Because we're all going to conferences, and every now and again we have to present. And from having been the audience, you may know that some people deliver presentations really well and you cannot wait for what they have to say next. Whereas with other people, you tend to drift off, you check your phone. Well, you want to make sure when you're presenting that you're in the first group. So a few things you can do before your presentation. Number one on the list is make sure that your content is solid and fits into the time frame, so that when you're delivering, you're not running out of time, you don't have to rush and run out of breath. And once you have that, rehearse, and then rehearse some more, so that it's absolutely in you and you cannot easily get flustered and you can essentially fly through it. Some of you then may also say, well, I struggle with nerves before a presentation. But there's a few tips for that as well. So just before you go out, take a few moments by yourself, maybe just find a bathroom or an empty room and do some power poses. So there's a few simple poses that automatically send positive and reaffirming responses to your brain to just boost your own confidence level. So one you can do is this, for example. Hold it for a while and just do wide stance and hands on the hips. And another one is this one, like if you just won a marathon. Just a few minutes will do, and your brain will also automatically be tricked into feeling more confident, and then you can walk out on stage and nail your presentation.
Sarah, I'm sorry. But thank you for helping me out of that. I had a child in the background. So much for reusing this video. Another thing, so that was a little info drop that we did a few years ago on presentation skills and preparing for a presentation. But it applies here. It applies to negotiation, because when you're walking into negotiation, it's essentially the same as walking into an important presentation. You need to prepare. Failure to prepare is preparing to failure, as our friend Benjamin Franklin once said, and this is a quote that we used to say a lot. One of our first team members here at Nimdzi Insights, Corrine Schroeder, would say this all of the time, and it's really stuck with me. So, Corrine, thank you for saying that, burning it into my psyche. Your clients are just clients. Remember this. Remember this. When we're talking about building confidence going into a meeting, they're just people. They're just other people. And I find this important to bring up on a workshop about negotiation because I find that sometimes we forget this. Sometimes the client becomes this somewhat of a like demigod figure, like, oh no, the client said this. Oh, I can't say no to the client. I can't argue with the client. And as you're going to see in the rest of this workshop, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. We're going to be saying no to the client. We're going to be arguing with the client. And when we go into an argument, we want to be backed up with as much information and preparation as possible. The more research you can do going into those conversations, the more prepared you're going to be. We get requests here at Nimdzi Insights from our clients quite frequently, actually, about, hey, my client is asking me to reduce rates. Melissa, you and I just had the other day a little pop-up live session where we talked about changing rates. That's over on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out, guys, in the audience. But our clients come to us and they say, hey, my client's wanting to reduce rates or they're wanting to implement MT. I need a bunch of information to back up. Like, I know what's best for my program. It's not a matter of like people trying to trick their stakeholders. It's a matter of people being like, I know what's best for my program, but my stakeholders don't understand that. So Nimdzi, can you help me out by sending me some research? And we're usually able to hook them up with that. So it's all about confidence. Remember, you're the expert. You're the expert. When it comes to localization, the clients are buying from you because you're the expert. Some other things that are going to help you have confidence besides just being the expert, because that's not something that's really actionable. I can't tell you, like, hey, as soon as you get out of this workshop, go out there and start being an expert. That's not very helpful advice. But what I can tell you to do is when you don't know something, admit it. Admit when you're wrong. Be honest. Be honest. Honestly, try to add value in everything that you do to your client. If you do these things, then you're going to have more confidence. Because if you're always honest, you don't need to worry about what you said to who. You don't need to worry about looking good. If you don't know something, you don't need to worry about sounding smart. Works for me. If I don't know something, I can usually just get around that by saying, I don't know the answer to that, but I know someone who does. For your consideration at the end of this mini lesson, what are some ways that we can boost our confidence before an important negotiation? We went through some fun ones with the power poses, of course, but there's more than that. So, with that, I think we're getting to the end of this little section. Melissa, how are we doing? You taking care of our people down there in chat?
For the deck, if we're going to share the deck, if this recording will be available afterwards. And we have a comment here from Janina Golakovsky. I love this power poses concept. I guess we should never forget a big smile in any power pose. The idea is of being kind no matter the situation. Sometimes it's not easy.
Yeah, being kind. Being kind is related to, but not a part of negotiating, is what I would say. I think being kind is, when it comes to negotiation, it's a tool in your toolbox. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And, I tell you, I should have said this in the intro, in the introduction, but I'm not a great negotiator. I'm a horrible negotiator. I say that loud. I say it publicly. I'm a horrible negotiator. I don't have the personality type for it. And if I need to negotiate something, I let my business partner, I let one of my team members do it. So I'm probably the worst. But you know what I am? I'm a great live streamer. So that's why I'm teaching the workshop. There's better people at Nimdzi to teach this workshop, but you're stuck with me today. Well, let's
Rockstar Tucker.
Yeah, rockstar.
Where's your pose?
let's cruise right along here. Let's get into this. Lesson 4. General negotiation tactics for translation project managers. In this lesson, I'm going to go through, this is a super structured lesson. I'm going to go through some of Nimdzi's favorite negotiation tactics. We're going to talk about the difference between negotiating up and the difference between negotiating down. And this gentleman right here that you see on screen is a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Gitomer. And Jeffrey Gitomer is a sales consultant. He wrote a book that if I still had all my mental faculties, I would be able to remember the name of that. Maybe someone in the chat section remembers the name of his books, plural. But I watch him because Jeffrey Gitomer here is a fellow live streamer. He goes live every morning. And it's like #life goals, because this dude just like dials in from his laptop to Facebook Live and like from his condo in Florida. Anyways, I digress. Anyways, Jeffrey Gitomer is a sales consultant, and he makes the claim that we often repeat here is people buy from people. People do not buy from companies. People do not buy from departments. People buy from people. So our job is to be a people. This slide I get a lot of mileage out of. You're going to see this a lot in the different workshops that we run. Who is the client and who is the vendor? Big man, small man. Now, traditionally, in a workshop, we'd go around the room and I'd pick on people and we'd have a conversation about this. But I'll just tell you right now, 9 times out of 10, people are going to look at this. Well, a lot of people are going to realize it's a trick question. But, the original assumption, the base assumption is that the big person is the client, the small person is the vendor. Now, sure, in terms of size, that might be true. Most single language service providers are indeed smaller than the MLVs, the multiple language vendors that they serve. However, who's the expert? This is the question we need to ask ourselves. Who is the expert? When you break down in your car and it's raining outside, it's night, and you don't know what to do, you're stranded, and you call a tow truck driver, that tow truck driver shows up, and he's the only person that can help you get out of the problem that you're in. Technically, you are the client in that situation. But the tow truck driver is the ones with power. Looking at some other general negotiation tactics in this section, it really helps to talk about, to look at and analyze your quote-unquote opponent. And I put opponent in quotation marks here because really this is clickbaity to call it opponent, because really in a successful negotiation, what you want to do, you don't want to have an adversary. You don't want to have an opponent. What you want to do is have someone that you're working with towards a common goal. That is what a successful negotiation is going to look like. So take that word opponent with a grain of salt, but really you want to try to empathize with them. What do they want? What do they need? People are pretty simple. I mean, people are complex, but they're also simple. They want to be perceived as others by good at their job. They want to feel heard, right? How many times have you heard that from your significant other? I don't feel heard. They want to feel heard. People want to make their own decisions. They want to have autonomy and power over their lives. They want to get promotions. They want to be treated fairly. They want to have good interpersonal relationships. They want to have valuable work relationships where they're getting value out of the relationship, and it's a two-way street. Cost versus value. Another general negotiation, not so much of a tactic, but something that you should really be aware of. Have an elevator pitch. Be able to speak at a dime's at a moment's notice about the difference between cost versus value. And of course, we talk about that in the general theory of the translation company. But I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. Essentially, cost is what the client's paying. Value is what they're getting. The value can come in different forms. We can talk about perceived value. We can talk about real value, added value, incremental value. But value is essentially the value. what is created in the language services value chain at each step. So those are things like value-added services like project management, vendor management, additional QA steps. These are all of the different types of value that a client is going to be getting from you. The cost is a line item on a spreadsheet. The cost is a line item on an invoice at the end of the month. Next, one of my favorites, say no. Say no. Say no. And I love this one because most people think this is horrible advice. Well, you can't say no to a client. Well, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. And once I'm able to convince people that you can, sometimes then it becomes, you want me to say no how many times? I want you to say no 3 times. 3 times is the number of times you're going to say no to the client. When they come to you with something, some silly request, something that you cannot fulfill, here's the thing though. You're not going to say no, period. You're certainly not going to say no, exclamation mark. You're going to say, say the client says, we're going to need you to reduce your rates. Well, unfortunately right now we're not in a position to be able to do that, but I'd be willing to entertain other ways that we can modify our working relationship, right? That's a no, right? No, I'm really, and then the client comes back basically, no, I'm really going to need you to reduce those rates. I hear and understand that you need to reduce those rates and that you have goals that you need to meet. We're going to work with you on this, but maybe let's schedule a call to talk about it. Yeah, that's a no, right? It's not a yes, but it's not a yes. One more time. You see where I'm going. I'm not going to go through this 3 times, but you say no. You say no 3 times. Don't give up too easily. That's what this is about, essentially. Clients don't respect people, or I shouldn't make blanket statements, but in general, it's hard to respect someone that doesn't stand up for themselves. And so this is a way of standing up for yourself, saying no 3 times. Now, what about the 4th time? The 4th time, you're probably going to say yes. Let's just be real. And the first 3 times, as you're saying no, you probably know that you're going to say yes that 4th time. You still go through this exercise. Next step, ask for something. Never give away something in a negotiation for free. If a client asks you for something, you ask them for something right back. I need you to reduce your rates. Okay, well, let's talk about changing our fuzzy rate structure. Let's talk about changing our SLAs that we have in place to adjust those expectations. Let's talk about adding a rush fee, right? Ask for something in return. Get creative. You can talk about, let's talk about changing our payment terms. As a project manager, you probably don't care about payment terms, but you should, because the company doesn't get paid on time. You don't get paid on time. Don't negotiate for the client. They can negotiate for themselves. The client, they're big boys. They're big girls. Don't negotiate for them. What do I mean by that? I mean, I see it all the time. And what it looks like is you're in a team selling environment at an LSP, and you're putting together a proposal for the client. And one person in the room says, don't you think that price is a little high? Shouldn't we reduce the rates? And another person in the room might say, I don't know if the client's going to be happy with these SLAs. We better make it tighter. We better really firm this up. Maybe we should offer a penalty structure if we don't meet our KPIs, right? And all of this is happening in the proposal room, in the war room, where people are getting ready to submit the proposal. They haven't even submitted the proposal yet. And effectively what's happening is they're negotiating for the client on the client's behalf. Don't do it. If the client thinks your rates are too high, they'll tell you. And I know some people in comments are going to say, but there was a situation. Yes, there's always going to be a situation. It doesn't apply to everything. Affordable. I love this. How much are your services? They're very affordable. Our services are very affordable. As a general rule in negotiation, you don't want to talk about price until the last possible step. In sales, You talk about price after you close the deal. If you want to know how to do that, take another e-learning. It's out of here. But affordable is a great word. Anytime someone asks you, how much are your prices? They're not cheap. They're not expensive. They're not $10,000. They are affordable. Pegging. I'm definitely getting banned from LinkedIn now. We need to talk about pegging. So, clarification here. Price pegging. Price pegging is where you plant a seed in somebody's mind in the beginning of a negotiation. So if I'm going to buy a car and I walk onto the lot and I say, how much are the cars? What's the salesperson going to say? Everybody in comments, what's the salesperson going to say? Affordable. A car is very affordable. Let's have a conversation about that. And I'm going to say, no. Really? How much is a car? And I say, well, here at this dealership, we're very affordable. We're not going to charge you $300,000 for a car like those guys over at Ferrari. What I did there is I just pegged, or what that salesperson did is that salesperson just pegged an expectation about price in the buyer's mind of $300,000. Now, that person's not going to sell. That person doesn't even have any cars on the lot worth that much. But when it does come time to talk about price, when it comes time to sit down and fill out the paperwork, that $300,000 is going to be in that person's mind. I see a lot of people get freaked out about counter offers. Like when they say a client comes back with a counter offer, they don't accept your offer. Let's say you're asking for a rate increase, which you should, by the way, if you're adding value. And adding more value. If you're adding more value to your clients this year than you were last year, think about asking for a rate increase. It's the great renegotiation. Talk to Nimdzi about how to do that before you do it, right? But if they come back to you and say, no, we're not giving it to you, but what about this? And they just give you something ridiculous, don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged, because the good news is at least they're willing to negotiate. Lots of other tips out there. We're going to get through. I'm going to speed this up here because we're running out of time. I don't mind going over, but I know some of you guys got real jobs that you got to get to. Quickly, the difference between negotiating with clients versus negotiating with vendors, it really needs to be called out. Generally speaking, the client de facto, like the baseline is that the client's going to have more bargaining power. When we talk about bargaining power of customers versus bargaining power of suppliers, the de facto default setting is the client's going to have more bargaining power. So you got to make sure that you're doing everything right. Make sure that you're talking to the decision makers. Don't waste your time with people that can't make decisions. Always be asking for something in change. We talked about that. Justify your ask. You're dealing with sometimes uneducated buyers who don't understand the value. So talk about that value. Don't talk about the cost. Talk about the value that you're adding. Don't talk about the price. If you need to negotiate on price, remember, price isn't the only thing. You can negotiate SLAs. You can negotiate payment terms. How you talk to a client too, watch your language. How you talk to a client is going to change the way. Just like, the price pegging, if you're using words like expense, cost, spend, invoice, these will affect the way the client perceives the value that you're adding. Lastly, two of my favorites is have an accountability partner internally. Sometimes it can be intimidating, negotiating with a powerful client. So it helps to have someone internally where you're like, I'm going to go, here's my win statement, here's what I'm going to go ask for, here's what I'm going to do, and then report back to that person afterwards. And during the negotiations, use these future statements. You really want a client to envision what it's going to be like if you get your way, right? If they're working with you, if they give you more rates, paint that vision for them. Now, if you're negotiating with the suppliers, the main thing I want to call out here is you might not have as much power as you think you do, especially if you're dealing with freelancers. Freelancers are freelancers because they like to freelance. And what that means to me is they like to be able to say no. And God love you, freelancers. I'm jealous because when you're a salaried employee, you don't get to say no. And vendor managers at LSPs have to deal with this every single day. But a good vendor manager at an LSP, hey, VMs in the comments, make yourselves known. Because a good VM in this industry is worth their weight in gold. Respect your local vendor manager. They're doing the Lord's work for you. They really are. Without those guys, we're not going to have qualified people to work on our stuff. Respect your local vendor manager, but also respect your talent. Don't waste their time. No unnecessary bureaucracy. Think, do you really need a test translation? Do you really need them to fill out those 10 forms just to be onboarded? Respect their time. Disrupting the industry. This slide is an import from another workshop that I work on, but I think it applies here because I think it applies a lot of times during when someone's trying to build out a vendor solution or build out a program between a supplier and a client. There's a lot of times you see clients, they want to build a solution in-house. That's the first step. Next step, they try to do it cheap. They'll find a cheap vendor. And then finally, they're going to find that right outsourced solution. And that's where you, as an LSP, have that bargaining power if you catch those clients in that third phase right now. Quick recap here. I'm going to keep breezing through here to be respectful of time, but there's a beautiful recap about the difference between vendors and negotiating with vendors and negotiating with clients. There's a lot of other tactics out there, guys. This is scratching the surface. Week-long courses, college courses have been taught on negotiation. I encourage you, go out there, Google this stuff, find some that you like, and learn more about it. Wrapping up this little mini section here for your consideration. How do you say no to a client? When should you do this? And how many times? In this lesson, we talked about saying no to a client. And we talked about saying no 3 times. Now, of course, that doesn't mean just no, no, no. You can provide different excuses, justifications, whatever. And the 4th time, you might say yes, and that's okay. But you command their respect by saying no. How is negotiating with a client different from negotiating with a vendor? Your thoughts below. And what are some negotiation tactics you have learned? Hopefully that you've learned here. Hopefully we're adding value to you today that you're going to try in your next negotiation. And with that, I'm going to bring Miss Melissa back up on stage here because we're all set through that. Lesson 6, or lesson 5, I should say, right here, role-playing exercises. We're not going to do it because A, we're out of time, and B, it's you got to pay for that. Come hire Nimdzi. We'll do a workshop for you. We'll get someone who actually knows how to negotiate instead of my hairy face up here, and we'll do some role play exercise with you. Role play exercises. I like to pretend that I hate role playing exercises, but actually they're kind of fun. So if you'd like to do some role play exercises, talk to Nikoli. Talk to Nikoli in the comments there. Do a quick recap here, and Melissa, I'll let you say a few words and highlight some comments.
Sure.
Recapping our course, the 5 market influencers shape the language services industry. If you're not familiar with the general theory of the translation company, I encourage you to check it out, now available on audiobook. The bargaining power of clients and the bargaining power of clients are 2 of the 5 forces in Michael Porter's 5 forces model, also known as the market influencers in the general theory of the translation company. These are going to be different, as someone pointed out in comments. These are going to be different depending upon which niche you're operating in, and they're going to affect how you approach negotiations. Preparation, information, research, experience, all of these can help you have the confidence that you need in order to negotiate better with your clients. And remember that everything is negotiable. Remember that everything is negotiable. Business is business. And with that, Melissa, what you got? What you got for me? Does anyone, any chitter chatter down there?
Yeah, well, somebody in the comments mentioned the name of the book, the Jeff Gitomer book. It's the Little Red Book of Selling.
That's right. The Little Red Book of Selling. That's a great book.
Yeah,
And
you know, the power poses resonated a lot as well within the audience, so that's good. And we have a new comment here from Judith Solotuk. Great presentation from Tucker as always.
Oh.
Power pose.
Yay. Yay. Well, with that, is that it? Is that it for comments?
Yeah, that's it. Everybody's asking for the deck. And Tucker, this was really insightful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody who joined us live today. So I guess that means, ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. If you enjoyed the Nimdzi Live experience, then please join us next time. Tomorrow, I'm going to be going live, an actual Nimdzi Live episode, not a workshop. So we're just going to shoot the shit with Stefan. Stefan, am I pronouncing your name correctly? I got my wrist slapped very publicly the other day in Stefan's Loc Lunch Dallas because I pronounced his name horribly the whole time. But yeah, if you're already signed up, then great. If not, go head on over there and sign up now. Once again, finally, my name is Tucker Johnson, host of Nimdzi Live, and it has been my pleasure to join all of you today. I appreciate our moderator, Melissa Torres. I appreciate Nika Lee providing air support over there in the chat, making sure that you guys all get this deck and the recording if you want it. And I appreciate everybody over here in chat. All of you guys. You guys are the true rock stars of Nimdzi Live. So, with that, we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, have a great day. Cheers.